I never expected my life to crumble the way it did. One moment, I was sipping champagne in the passenger seat of a brand new Audi Q8, the buttery leather warming under me as I ran my fingers over the diamond-stitched interior. The next, my phone was ringing with a call that made my stomach turn. I shouldn't have answered it, but I did. And that was the moment everything started unraveling. Let's rewind. Valentine's Day had always been a big deal for me. I didn't believe in those relationships where people grew complacent, where anniversaries turned into obligatory dinners, and gifts were whatever was cheapest on sale. No, I believed in extravagance. Grand gestures. If you loved someone, you showed them. You proved it. So when my ex-husband Daniel and I first started dating, I made sure he understood that. He was the practical type, the kind of guy who thought a meaningful gift could be something like a handwritten letter or a home-cooked meal. I had to train him out of that. Romance wasn't cheap. But he learned. For years he bought me what I deserved: designer bags, expensive perfumes, jewelry that made my friends envious. At first I thought I had him wrapped around my finger. But somewhere along the way, his enthusiasm started dying out. He'd sigh when I sent him links to the Cartier collections. He'd grumble when I pointed out a Valentino dress I wanted. And when I told him that my friend's husband got her a Rolex just because, Daniel would just rub his temples and say something about cutting back. I hated that. When had he become so boring? When we first met, he was driven, hungry for success. He worked insane hours, climbed the ranks at his company, and I admired that. But after we got married, after we had our dream wedding, something in him changed. He talked about savings and budgets and investments. He wanted to stay in on weekends instead of taking me out to expensive restaurants. He traded his tailored suits for polos and khakis. He was turning into a man I didn't recognize. So I found excitement elsewhere. It wasn't some torrid love affair at first. Just small things. A little flirtation. A few text messages that lingered past midnight. And then before I knew it, I had a secret. Daniel never found out. Not really. He suspected, but I knew how to manipulate that doubt. I knew how to make him second-guess himself. Whenever he asked questions, I'd cry. I'd tell him he was being paranoid, insecure. I'd twist things around until he was the one apologizing. But that didn't last forever. He left. And the divorce wasn't a war like I feared it would be. In fact, it was too easy. He didn't demand anything. He didn't make me grovel or beg. He just walked away. And for a while I thought I had one. Fast forward to this morning. I had just stepped outside my apartment when I saw it, the Audi. Deep midnight blue, sleek, powerful. The kind of car that turned heads. My parents were standing next to it, grinning ear to ear. "Happy Valentine's, sweetheart," my mother beamed. I gasped. "Are you serious?" My father chuckled. "It's yours." I ran my hands over the hood, my heart hammering in my chest. "You guys didn't have to do this." "Nonsense," Mom said, waving a hand. "You deserve it after everything." And she was right. I did deserve it. They had been furious when Daniel left me. They had seen how much I had sacrificed for that marriage, how much I had given. And even after everything, even after the divorce finalized, he still hadn't learned. "I don't understand," I had ranted to my mother last week. "How is he fine? He should be suffering." But Daniel was still living his dull, predictable life. Still working his safe corporate job, still saving his money like an old man. Meanwhile, I was the one who had to rebuild. The victim. And my parents, they understood. So this car? It wasn't just a gift. It was proof that they saw me. That they knew what I had been through. I climbed into the driver's seat, reveling in the way the engine purred under my hands. "This is perfect," I breathed. My mom smiled warmly. "Oh, we know." And then my phone rang. I groaned, digging it out of my purse, expecting some stupid telemarketer or another invitation to some party I wasn't interested in. But it wasn't any of those. It was Daniel. I stared at the name on my screen. I hadn't spoken to him in months. Curiosity got the best of me. I answered. "What do you want?" There was silence at first. And then, in a tone so cold it sent chills down my spine, he said, "You should check your mailbox." I blinked. "What?" A beat. And then he hung up. I pulled my phone away, frowning. "What was that about?" my father asked. I shook my head. "I don't know. Probably nothing. But the uneasy feeling in my gut told me otherwise. Still, I wasn't going to let Daniel ruin my day. I dismissed the thought, revved the engine one last time and pulled out of the driveway. I didn't check my mailbox until later that evening. When I did, my breath caught in my throat. A single envelope sat waiting for me. I opened it, my fingers trembling. Inside was a bill. For my parents' debts. And underneath a handwritten note. It's only fair. Mom. I felt the world tilt. My stomach dropped. I rushed back inside, my heart pounding as I grabbed my phone, dialing my mother's number. She picked up after 2 rings. Oh, sweetheart, she cooed, her voice warm. Did you get your gift? My gift. I choked out. What the hell is this? Her tone never wavered. You got the car, didn't you? But. And Daniel. He's never been as generous as you, honey. A pause. It's only fair. I opened my mouth to respond, to scream. But then something inside me broke. Because suddenly I realized something terrifying. Daniel had always been the responsible one. The provider. The glue that held everything together. And now, for the first time ever, he was gone. And I was the one left holding the wreckage. I don't remember how long I stood there, staring at that bill. My hands shook as my mother's words echoed in my mind. It's only fair. Fair. What was fair about this? I felt sick. The car key was still clutched in my fist, the weight of it suddenly unbearable. Just hours ago, I had been gliding down the highway in that brand new Audi, feeling on top of the world. Now it felt like an anchor around my neck. Daniel. I needed to talk to Daniel. Not because I cared about him, God, no. But because I needed to understand why he thought this was his problem to solve. This wasn't his debt. It wasn't his responsibility. It was my parents. And mine. But not his. I scrolled through my call log, hit redial and brought the phone to my ear, pacing across my apartment. Straight to voicemail. I cursed under my breath and called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. I threw my phone onto the couch, running my hands through my hair. The bastard was ignoring me. I needed answers. Now. I drove straight to his house, my heart hammering in my chest. His neighborhood was as dull and predictable as ever. Neatly trimmed lawns, white fences, cars parked perfectly in their driveways like something out of a damn commercial. But as I pulled up to Daniel's house, something felt off. His car wasn't there. Not the black SUV he used for work. Not the old Honda he kept as a backup. I frowned. That was odd. Daniel never traveled. He was the definition of routine. Even when we were married, the most spontaneous thing he ever did was switch his coffee order from black to a latte. I parked in the driveway and marched up to the front door, knocking hard. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing. A creeping unease settled over me. I stepped back, glancing around. His porch light was off. The curtains were drawn. No sign of life anywhere inside. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Tom. Tom was Daniel's coworker. Not exactly his best friend, but they were close enough that I figured he'd know something. I hit dial. Hello. Tom, hey, it's me. Listen, have you seen Daniel? There was a long pause on the other end. No. I thought you knew. My stomach twisted. Knew what? Another pause. Then. Daniel quit. My heart skipped a beat. He what? Yeah. Like 2 weeks ago. Just walked into the office one day, handed in his resignation and left. Didn't even say goodbye to anyone. It was weird, honestly. Not like him. I felt the blood drain from my face. No, that didn't make sense. Daniel was stable. He had never left a job without a plan. He was the type to work until retirement, to obsess over benefits and 401ks. What about his house? I pressed. Did he move? I don't know, Tom admitted. All I know is that he's gone. No one's heard from him. And I mean no one. His office is cleared out, his emails are deactivated. It's like he just vanished. Vanished. I ended the call without another word and stared at Daniel's darkened house, my mind racing. Where the hell was he? I spent the next 2 days searching for him. Called everyone I could think of. No one had seen him. No one had heard from him. His phone was still going straight to voicemail. His email was gone. His social media deactivated. It was like he had just erased himself from existence. And the worst part? I started to realize that this wasn't an accident. Daniel had planned this. Every step of it. The resignation. The deactivated accounts. The silence. This wasn't some midlife crisis. This was a deliberate, calculated exit. And suddenly I understood. He knew what was coming. He knew about the debt. He knew my parents would dump it on him. And instead of fighting, instead of arguing, he just left. He walked away. From me. From everything. And now? Now I was the one left behind. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Because for the first time in my life, I realized Daniel wasn't coming back. Daniel was gone. The thought echoed in my mind like a hollow drumbeat. An eerie rhythm I couldn't escape. For days I refused to believe it. It wasn't possible. People like Daniel didn't just leave. They didn't disappear overnight, cutting off every single connection without a trace. But he had. And the world kept moving like nothing had changed. I sat in my apartment, staring at the letter from my mother. The bill for their debt spread out on my coffee table like an open wound. It's only fair. My mother's voice still rang in my ears, her sickly sweet smile flashing in my mind. As if this was some logical exchange. As if Daniel owed us something. My jaw clenched. Why hadn't I seen this coming? Daniel had always been the responsible one. The one who planned, who accounted for every detail of his life like a damn accountant balancing a ledger. This wasn't just a spontaneous act of defiance. No, this was months, maybe years in the making. He had prepared for this. I could see it now, all the small changes that I'd ignored. The way he stopped pushing back when I asked for things. The way he stopped arguing when I made demands. I thought he was just growing tired, that I was finally winning, breaking down that stubborn sense of duty he clung to so fiercely. But I was wrong. He hadn't been giving in. He had been detaching. Letting go. Piece by piece without me even realizing it. And now he was gone. And I was the one left picking up the mess. I wasn't stupid. I knew I couldn't just ignore the bill. My parents weren't exactly financial masterminds. Their idea of saving was stuffing cash into an old shoebox under their bed. They had always relied on me to smooth things over, to find solutions when they dug themselves into holes too deep to climb out of. But that was when I had Daniel. When I had his steady income, his patience, his ability to make sense of the chaos they created. Without him, I was drowning. And the worst part? They didn't care. Not about me. Not about what they had done. Only about what Daniel's absence meant for them. I called my mother the next morning. She picked up on the first ring, her voice bright and pleasant, like she hadn't just handed me a financial time bomb days ago. "Sweetheart, how's the car?" I gritted my teeth. "Where is he?" Silence. Then a soft knowing hum. "Oh, you finally noticed." My grip on the phone tightened. "You knew." "Of course, darling. We all knew." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. "All?" I repeated. "Who's all?" She chuckled as if this was some inside joke. "Your father. Your aunt. The neighbors. Everyone saw it coming except for you." The room spun. "Mom," I said slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. "What the hell are you talking about?" Sigh. The kind that suggested she was already bored with the conversation. "Honey, Daniel was never going to stay. He was tired. You drained him, we drained him, he was just too polite to say it. But we all saw the signs. The way he stopped arguing. The way he stopped caring. It was only a matter of time before he ran." I felt my stomach twist. "No," I said. "He wouldn't just." "Wouldn't he?" she cut in. "You really think you meant enough to him to keep him here?" The words hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to fight back, to argue, to deny it. But I couldn't. Because the truth was staring me right in the face. Daniel had left. And I had never even seen it coming. I spent the next few days in a daze, avoiding my parents' calls, ignoring my problems. I didn't touch the Audi. Didn't leave the apartment. I just sat there, scrolling through my phone, checking Daniel's old social media accounts even though I knew they were deactivated. It was like he had never even existed. And then, on the 5th day, my phone rang again. I nearly ignored it, but something about the number made me pause. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't my father. It was a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then picked up. "Hello." Silence. Then a breath. And a voice I hadn't heard in weeks. Did you miss me? My blood ran cold. I knew that voice. And it sure as hell wasn't Daniel. I froze, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. That voice. I knew that voice. It had been months, maybe longer, since I'd last heard it, but I hadn't forgotten the smooth, arrogant drawl, the way every word dripped with amusement, like he was always in on a joke no one else knew. I swallowed hard. What do you want? A low chuckle. Come on, babe. That's not how you greet an old friend. My stomach twisted. I almost hung up right then. But something in his tone made me pause. He knew something. And I needed answers. I forced my voice to stay steady. Why are you calling me, Caleb? Sigh. Straight to business. No, how have you been? No, God, I've missed you. Caleb. Another chuckle. Fine, fine. Have it your way. There was a pause then. I heard about Daniel. My breath caught. Caleb and Daniel had never met. At least not officially. Because Daniel had never known about Caleb. Not really. There had been no evidence. No text messages. No lingering glances across a room. Just a handful of nights stolen in the shadows, when I had convinced myself that a little fun on the side wouldn't hurt anybody. And then, like all good things, it had come to an end. Or so I thought. I cleared my throat. What do you mean you heard about him? Caleb clicked his tongue. Babe, you think I don't keep tabs on you? I knew he was gonna leave. Hell, I could have told you months ago. A lump formed in my throat. You don't know anything. Oh, don't I? His voice was too smug. Too confident. I hated it. Because deep down I knew he did know something. And I hated that even more. What do you want? I repeated, my patience wearing thin. A pause. Then. To talk. I almost laughed. About what? Another pause. And then softer this time. About what's coming. A chill ran down my spine. What the hell does that mean? But the line had already gone dead. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of Caleb. But because of the slow, gnawing realization that I was spiraling. Daniel was gone. My parents had dumped their debt on me like I was a walking ATM. And now Caleb had resurfaced, cryptic as ever, acting like he knew something I didn't. I needed control. I needed to do something. And I needed to figure out where the hell Daniel had disappeared to. Because whether I liked it or not, a small, ugly part of me needed him. Not because I missed him. Not because I wanted him back. But because for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I could survive without him. I spent the next morning pacing my apartment, my thoughts unraveling into a tangled mess of frustration, confusion, and, though I hated to admit it, fear. Caleb's call had rattled me. Not just because I hadn't spoken to him in ages, but because of what he implied. About what's coming. What the hell did that mean? I had half a mind to call him back, demand answers, but I knew Caleb too well. He loved the chase, the mind games, the slow drip of information just to watch me squirm. No. If he had something to tell me, he'd make me wait for it. Which meant I had to focus on something else. Like finding Daniel. I grabbed my phone and pulled up his old number. Even though I knew what would happen. Straight to voicemail. Again. Again. And again. I cursed under my breath and tossed the phone onto the couch, my chest tightening. Daniel wasn't coming back. He had erased himself completely. And now I was left in the wreckage. By noon my mother called. I didn't want to answer. Every instinct in me screamed to ignore her, to let the call go to voicemail like I had done for the past 2 days. But I knew her. She'd keep calling. And calling. And calling. So with a deep breath I hit accept and brought the phone to my ear. Before I could say a word, her voice cut through, tight with irritation. Where have you been? I exhaled sharply. Busy. Well, you shouldn't be busy. You have a lot to figure out. I clenched my jaw. You mean your debt? Oh, sweetheart, she sighed. It's our debt now. A fresh wave of anger surged through me. No. It's not. She ignored me. You've always been so good at fixing things, honey. I know you'll figure something out. The casual tone in her voice, the way she expected me to clean up her mess, made my skin crawl. You knew Daniel was leaving, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Didn't you? Silence. And then, a quiet chuckle. It sent a shiver down my spine. Oh, darling, she said smoothly. Of course I did. I sat frozen long after the call ended, my heart pounding in my chest. Of course she knew. She had counted on it. She had seen the way Daniel was slipping away long before I had. And she had planned for it. Because she knew that once he was gone, I had no one left to hide behind. I gritted my teeth and grabbed my keys. I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. That I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mother's words kept replaying in my head. Of course I knew. I wanted to believe she was bluffing, that she was just saying it to get under my skin. But deep down I knew the truth. She had expected this. She had counted on it. And now here I was, left to pick up the mess she had been too selfish to clean up herself. I pulled into my parents' driveway and killed the engine. The house looked the same as always, pristine, well kept, not a single blade of grass out of place. From the outside, no one would ever guess they were drowning in debt. That was the thing about my mother. She knew how to pretend. I stepped out of the car, my heels clicking against the pavement, and rang the doorbell. A few moments later, the door swung open. My mother stood there, perfectly put together as always. Her hair was styled, her jewelry subtle yet expensive looking, and she wore that same infuriatingly smug smile. "Sweetheart," she said warmly, stepping aside to let me in. I walked past her without a word. My father was in the living room, nursing a drink. He barely looked up when I entered. "So," I said, crossing my arms, "how long have you been planning this?" My mother arched an eyebrow. "Planning what, darling? Don't play dumb, Mom." I threw the envelope onto the coffee table. "This. Daniel leaving. The debt. All of it." She sighed as if I was being dramatic. "It was inevitable, honey. He was never going to stay." My blood boiled. "And you knew that. That's why you dumped everything on me." She didn't even deny it. She just tilted her head and smiled. "It's only fair." A chill ran down my spine. "Fair?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "What part of this is fair?" My mother picked up the envelope and examined it like it was a trivial piece of junk mail. "We raised you, darling," she said smoothly. "We gave you everything. And when you married Daniel, we supported you. We trusted you to keep things together." I let out a bitter laugh. "You trusted me? No, Mom. You used me. And you used him too." Her expression didn't change. "I trusted you to marry well," she continued, completely unfazed. "To build a life that would benefit all of us. That's what family does, sweetheart." I took a step back, suddenly feeling like I was suffocating. "Oh my God," I whispered. "This whole time you never actually cared about me. Just what I could give you." My father finally spoke, his voice low and tired. "It's not personal, kid. It's just life." My hands curled into fists. "You ruined my marriage," I spat. "And you don't even care." My mother sighed, rubbing her temples. "Oh, don't be melodramatic, dear. Your marriage was over long before Daniel left. He was already checked out. You just didn't see it." Her words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I knew she was right. Daniel had been slipping away for a long time. And I had been too arrogant to notice. Or maybe I just hadn't wanted to. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'm not paying this," I said, my voice cold. "This isn't my problem." For the first time, my mother's smile faltered. "Oh, sweetheart," she cooed. "Where else will you go?" Something inside me snapped. I took a deep breath, then turned on my heel and walked straight out the door. I didn't stop. Not when my mother called my name. Not when my father muttered something under his breath. I didn't stop until I was back in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard I thought it might snap. And then, for the first time in years, I made a decision. I was leaving. For good. I didn't go back to my apartment. Not right away. Instead, I drove. Nowhere in particular, just away. Away from the suffocating grip of my mother's expectations. Away from the wreckage of my past. Away from the debt that wasn't mine but had been dumped on me anyway. I kept my foot on the gas, my heart pounding as I replayed her words in my head. "Where else will you go?" As if I had no choice. As if I was trapped. But she was wrong. I did have a choice. And for the first time in my life, I was going to make the right one. I checked into a cheap motel off the highway. The kind with flickering neon signs and paper-thin walls. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. A temporary escape. I sat on the stiff mattress staring at my phone. My notifications were filled with missed calls from my mother, a few from my father, even more from a couple of mutual friends, probably sent by her to guilt me into coming back. I ignored them all. Then, just as I was about to put my phone on silent, another name flashed across the screen. Caleb. I hesitated. Then, before I could second-guess myself, I answered. You left. His voice was smooth, knowing. Like he had predicted this all along. I exhaled. Yeah. A pause. Then. About time. I scoffed. What do you want, Caleb? He chuckled. Still so hostile. You wound me, babe. I rolled my eyes. Cut the crap. Another pause. Then his voice dropped lower, more serious. You should be careful. A chill ran down my spine. What the hell does that mean? He exhaled. It means your parents? They're not as helpless as you think. I frowned. What are you talking about? Let's just say they're very motivated to get you back, he said slowly. And they have a habit of making problems disappear. I stiffened. What are you saying? That they're dangerous. A long silence. Then, I'm saying they're desperate. My stomach twisted. I thought I knew my parents. Manipulative? Yes. Controlling? Absolutely. But dangerous? I wasn't sure. And that uncertainty scared me more than anything else. I licked my lips. Why do you care? Caleb chuckled. Who says I do? I sighed. Right. Because you just love playing games. He didn't deny it. You need to disappear, babe, he said finally. Before they make you come back. I gritted my teeth. I'm not afraid of them. You should be. And then before I could respond, the line went dead. I didn't sleep that night. Every noise outside my motel door made my heart race. Every passing car made me tense. Because for the first time in my life, I realized I had no idea how far my parents were willing to go. And worse? I wasn't sure I wanted to find out. Sleep never came. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the stained carpet, my thoughts spiraling. Caleb's warning replayed in my mind over and over. You need to disappear before they make you come back. He had been messing with me. He had to be. Right? My parents were manipulative, sure. Controlling, absolutely. But dangerous? That was ridiculous. Wasn't it? I exhaled sharply and stood up, pacing. The room felt smaller with each passing second, the flickering motel light casting odd shadows on the walls. I checked my phone. Missed calls. My mother. My father. A few from unknown numbers. And then, a text. Mom. Come home now. We can fix this. I scoffed. Fix this? There was nothing to fix. I wasn't their damn piggy bank. I wasn't coming back. My phone buzzed again. Mom. Last chance, sweetheart. Don't make us do this the hard way. A chill ran down my spine. What the hell did that mean? I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Were they bluffing? Maybe they were trying to scare me into crawling back. But something about it felt wrong. Like they weren't just using words anymore. Like they meant it. I grabbed my bag. I needed to get out of here. I hit the road before the sun even came up. I didn't have a plan, just an overwhelming need to run. Every few miles, I checked my rearview mirror, half expecting to see my mother's sleek Lexus or my father's old BMW trailing behind me. But there was nothing. Just open road. I turned off my phone. Let them wonder where I was. Let them stew in their own desperation. I wasn't going back. I wouldn't go back. By the time I stopped driving, I had crossed into another state. The town was small, quiet. Just the kind of place no one would expect me to be. I checked into another motel. This one slightly less depressing than the last. As soon as I got inside, I locked the door, double-checked the windows, and finally turned my phone back on. A flood of messages poured in. Mom. Dad. Unknown numbers. And one from Caleb. Caleb. They're looking for you. I felt my heart hammer against my ribs. No. No. I wasn't important enough for this. My parents were selfish, but they weren't the kind to send people after me. They weren't. A knock on the motel door made my breath catch in my throat. I froze. It was probably nothing. Just housekeeping. Just some drunk guest knocking on the wrong door. Another knock. Louder this time. I crept toward the peephole, every muscle in my body tense. And when I looked, I felt my stomach drop, because standing right there outside my motel room was a man I didn't recognize. Dressed in black. Expression unreadable. And I knew. My parents had found me that I stepped back from the door, my breath shallow. The man outside didn't knock again. He just stood there waiting. Watching. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. My parents wouldn't actually send someone after me. Would they? Then I remembered my mother's last text. Don't make us do this the hard way. A cold chill ran down my spine. They weren't bluffing. I needed to get out. Now. I grabbed my bag and moved quietly, my heart hammering against my ribs. There was only one exit, the front door. No back way out, no fire escape. I was trapped. The only thing between me and him was a flimsy motel door. Another knock. Then, a voice. Miss Harmon, we need to talk. I flinched. He knew my name. I didn't respond. Didn't move. I just stood there, barely breathing. A pause. Then, you don't have to be afraid. Your parents just want to make sure you're safe. Safe. I almost laughed. Safe from what? The only danger in my life was them. I took another slow step back, my fingers tightening around my phone. Caleb. He warned me. I pulled up my messages. Me. There's someone outside my room. I hit send, my hands shaking. The knock came again. Harder this time. I know you're in there. Shit. I turned, scanning the room. No weapons. No back exit. My only option was the window. But if I ran, I had to be fast. I moved quickly, unlocking the window as silently as I could. The metal frame groaned as I pushed it open. Too loud. Too slow. A voice from the door. Don't make this difficult. I clenched my teeth and swung one leg over the windowsill. Then, my phone vibrated. A message. Caleb, stay low. Go now. I didn't hesitate. I slipped out of the window and hit the ground running. The moment my feet hit the pavement, I heard the motel door burst open behind me. They were inside. I sprinted toward the parking lot, my lungs burning. My car was only a few feet away. I fumbled for my keys, hands shaking, every second stretching into eternity. I yanked the door open and threw myself inside, slamming the lock down just as I saw movement in my side mirror. The man. Running toward me. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered once, twice before roaring to life. He reached for the handle. I hit the gas. Tires screeched against the pavement. My heart pounded as I sped onto the highway, hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. I didn't stop. Didn't look back. I just drove. My phone buzzed again. I glanced down, my pulse still racing. Caleb. You okay? Me, they found me. A pause. Then. Caleb, I know. I sent someone to follow them. You need to lose your car. I frowned. Me, what? Why? Caleb. Because they know what you're driving. They won't stop, babe. You need to disappear. Disappear. Just like Daniel. Just like he had planned for this. And now I was about to do the same. I gritted my teeth. I wasn't going to let them drag me back. I wasn't going to be their pawn anymore. I was done. So I took a deep breath and made the hardest decision of my life. The highway stretched endlessly in front of me, the headlights of passing cars flashing like ghosts in the night. My pulse was still hammering in my ears, my fingers aching from how tightly I gripped the steering wheel. I had nearly been caught. If I hadn't run, if I had hesitated for even a second longer. I shook the thought away. I was still here. Still free. But Caleb was right. I wouldn't be free for long if I didn't disappear. I pulled off the highway at a gas station, my mind racing. I couldn't keep the car. My mother had gifted me that Audi like it was some grand prize, but now it felt like a tracker. They knew it. They were following it. I popped open my phone and texted Caleb. Me. How do I lose it? A moment later my screen lit up. Caleb. Abandon it. Somewhere public. A bus station, a mall. Then get on a bus. Cash only. No cards, no phone tracking. I swallowed hard. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I had cash, enough to last for a while, but I hadn't expected to cut myself off completely. But what choice did I have? If I didn't vanish, they would find me. And I knew deep down my mother wouldn't stop until I was back under her control. I took a deep breath. This is it. I was doing it. I was leaving everything behind. I found a bus station a few miles away, the kind of rundown place that people pass through without remembering. I parked the Audi in the lot, grabbed my bag and walked away without looking back. It was surreal. One moment that car had been a symbol of everything I had won. Proof that I was still important, that I still mattered. Now, it was a trap. And I was walking away from it without a second thought. I bought a bus ticket in cash, one way far away. Somewhere I had no connection to. Somewhere they wouldn't think to look. Then I shut off my phone. For good. The bus rumbled to life beneath me. The world outside the window growing smaller as we pulled away. And for the first time in my life, I was free. No Daniel. No parents. No Caleb. No past. Just me. Alone. Starting over. And as terrifying as that was, it was also the most exhilarating thing I had ever done. The end.